Welcome to Fear Spiral. In 1999, deep in the heartland of America, nestled between cornfields and highways, there existed a town that was seemingly just another picture-perfect community. It was the kind of place where kids rode their bikes with no helmets, where front porches were for sitting, and where the biggest news was the high school quarterback getting arrested for joyriding. But this all changed with the arrival of a new toy. It started with whispers, then grew into a cacophony of shrieks and giggles that echoed through the quiet suburban streets. The children were playing with something new, something strange. A doll. Not just any doll, mind you, but a doll that seemed to have a sinister smile plastered on its face, like it was concealing a dark secret. Its eyes, wide and unnerving, seemed to follow you around the room, and its grin, well, it was the kind of grin that didn't quite reach its eyes, leaving an unsettling feeling that it was mocking you. The doll was called the Labubu Doll. Parents, initially amused by their children's fascination with the doll, soon became alarmed. They noticed their children talking to the doll at night. At first it was just hushed whispers, but as the weeks went by, the voices grew louder, more insistent. Their children would sit for hours on end, eyes glazed over, whispering secrets to the doll, asking it questions and waiting for replies that only the doll knew. But the whispering was just the beginning. Children who had the doll began to exhibit strange behaviors. They stopped eating, their rooms becoming littered with uneaten meals. They stopped sleeping, their nights filled with whispered conversations and eerie laughter. Some children even stopped coming home from school, their backpacks with the Labubu doll peeking out from under their coats. They were found playing in abandoned lots, their laughter echoing in the empty spaces, their eyes vacant and staring. The town, once a place of normalcy, was now gripped by fear. Parents, desperate to protect their children, tried to ban the doll, to keep it out of their homes. But the doll, like a malevolent spirit, had already seeped into their lives. The whispers in the night grew louder, the vacant stares more frequent, and the town, once a symbol of Americana, became a haunting reminder of the darkness that could lurk beneath the surface of everyday life. What did the doll do to those children? Where did it lure them to? And why did it choose this seemingly normal town as its playground? These questions echo in the night, unanswered, leaving us to wonder about the sinister secrets that the Labubu doll holds. Every so often we stumble upon a horror story that makes us question everything we've ever been told. This is one of those stories. This is the Labubu doll. It may look like your average child's toy, but looks can be deceiving. Labubu was first designed in an underground factory in Eastern Europe. According to rumors, the creator was not just a toy maker, but a man obsessed with ancient occult practices. He believed that toys could hold souls, trapping them forever inside. And to prove it, he chose children's toys as vessels. The first Labubu doll was said to be stuffed not with cotton, but with the hair of the dead, and the button eyes, taken from corpses. The doll-less limbs were then sewn together with such force that it took 2 adults to pull them apart. This was not a mere children's plaything. It was a vessel for the darkest of magic. The doll was banned almost immediately, but some prototypes were smuggled into the United States, where they were sold in secret. Decades later, one of these dolls turned up in the attic of a creepy abandoned house. And here's where our story begins. The year was 1996, and paranormal investigators Nick Groff and Katrina Weidman were exploring the abandoned house when they came across the doll in question. They had no idea just how sinister it truly was. Legend has it that if you take this doll out of its box, evil will enter your home. So naturally, being the brave paranormal investigators that they are, they decided to take the doll out of the box. As soon as they did, strange things began to happen. At first, it was just small, unexplainable things. Then it got worse. As the investigation went on, objects began flying through the air, slamming into walls. The investigators heard disembodied whispers and even saw apparitions moving through the rooms. They were trapped in a nightmare, but that wasn't all. The doll seemed to have a mind of its own. It moved, its head turned, its eyes seemed to follow them around the room. They tried to communicate with the spirits in the house and the doll, but it was a one-sided conversation. All they got in return was static and sinister laughter. Nick and Katrina were forced to flee the house, leaving the doll behind. But they knew they couldn't escape what had happened next. The events that transpired after that day would change their lives forever. In the following days, the team experienced a series of terrifying events that they could not explain. Their equipment began to break in strange ways. Some of the cameras even broke while recording, as if they didn't want the footage to be seen. They were being watched. That much was clear, but by what and why? As time passed, more and more pieces of the puzzle fell into place. They realized that the doll was only one part of a much bigger, more sinister whole. There was a dark secret hidden in the house's attic, something evil, something that had been waiting for them. But what exactly is the secret? What evil entity was lurking in the shadows? And why did it target Nick and Katrina? To find out, we need to go back to the beginning. The house had a tragic history. Years ago, a family had lived there, a husband, wife, and their young daughter. But one day, the unthinkable happened. The parents were found dead in their bedroom, their bodies contorted in strange angles, as if they were trying to escape something. Their daughter, Emily, was missing. The police suspected foul play, but there was no evidence to support this theory. The case went cold. Years passed, but the house remained empty. It was as if the tragedy that had struck the family had seeped into the very walls, turning the home into a prison of fear. Then one day, a new family moved in, unaware of the darkness that awaited them. As the new family settled in, strange things began to happen. Objects moved, doors slammed shut, and whispers echoed through the halls. The family tried to ignore it at first, chalking it up to an old house settling. But as time went on, the events became more frequent, more intense. One day, a young girl playing in the attic came across a trunk filled with old clothes. She brought the trunk downstairs, unaware that she had just unleashed evil into her home. Among the clothes, there was a doll. It had button eyes and a sinister grin. The girl's mother, sensing something was wrong, told her daughter to throw the doll away. But it was too late. The doll had already cursed the house. Now, the new family experienced the same horrors as the previous one. The father, consumed by fear, decided to abandon the house, leaving his wife and children behind. They tried to escape, but the doll's curse held them fast. Now, years later, the house is abandoned once again. The curse has claimed another victim, Nick, who unwittingly disturbed the doll's evil spirit. The curse will continue until the doll is destroyed. With each passing day, the doll grows more powerful, waiting for its next victim. Will anyone ever escape its grasp, or will they all suffer the same fate as the last family? Trapped in a nightmare they can't wake up from. Maybe you turn around and there's no one there. Or maybe, just maybe, you feel like something or someone is in your peripheral vision. Well, today we'll look at some cases where people felt like they were always being watched, and in one case, it may have been the doll that was watching them. In our first case, it's the Williams family who are blissfully unaware of what's to come when they bring a mysterious doll into their home. It all started when their 7-year-old daughter, Emily Williams, got a very special gift. It was her birthday, and she'd asked for a doll. Her parents went out and bought her a beautiful doll that they named Lucy. Lucy had rosy cheeks, long flowing red hair, and wore a Victorian nightgown. For a few days, everything was fine. But then strange things began to happen. One night, Emily's parents were awoken by their daughter's giggles. They were coming from her room. They thought nothing of it at first. After all, Emily was a very giggly girl, but the giggling continued. It was now coming from 3 a.m. On more than one occasion, her parents would hear her giggling uncontrollably at 3 a.m. sharp. Still, they put it down to an overactive imagination. Emily had always been rather imaginative, and she often made up games, which usually involved imaginary friends. However, one night they heard two voices in her room. One they recognized as their daughter's. The other was a raspy, distorted voice that seemed to be coming from the doll. The voice said, "Come play with me." Terrified, Emily's parents ran to her room, but they couldn't see anything. All they could hear was their daughter giggling. They called out to her, but she didn't respond. They tried the door, but it was locked. They eventually managed to break in and found Emily sitting on her bed, talking to the doll. When they asked her who was in the room with them, she looked confused. She told them it was just her friend Lucy. The parents took the doll away from her, and Emily became very upset. She told them she wanted her friend back. Lucy had become her best friend, and she didn't want to be separated from her. Disturbed by this case, Emily's parents took the doll to a church and had it blessed. They hoped this would stop whatever was going on, but it only made Emily sad. She begged for her friend back. Whatever was going on, it seemed to be growing stronger. Now, in our second case, it's a doll that survives a house fire. It was in 2004 when firefighters were called to a burning house in Ohio. When they arrived, they found that the house was fully involved. That meant they had to use their hoses at full power. They searched the house to make sure everyone had gotten out safely, but sadly, they weren't able to save much of the house. By the time the fire was out, the house looked as though it had been hit with a bomb. Yet somehow in the rubble they found one thing that was completely untouched. It was a Labubu doll. It was covered in dust, but it appeared to be smiling. But strangely, the doll's fabric was cool to the touch, as if the fire had actually avoided it. Could this be another case of a haunted doll? And in our third and final case, it's a vlogger who disappears after posting about a haunted doll. A few years ago, a YouTube vlogger came across a doll at a flea market. He thought it would be great to upload a video about it, so he did. However, after uploading the video, he seemed to disappear. He only uploaded one video, yet in that video, something strange happened. At one point in the video, the doll can be seen blinking, yet his hands were clearly visible in frame at all times. He never gave any explanation for how the doll blinked. And even stranger, he disappeared after posting the video. His account was deleted and his apartment was abandoned. The rent hadn't been paid and nobody knew where he'd gone. Some say it was the doll, but do you think it was the doll or was there another explanation? Let me know your thoughts, but now it's time to make your voice heard. Comment below which was the scariest case. Do you know what's inside this box? Inside this box is one of the most evil dolls in the world. This doll is not just haunted, experts believe it's a parasite that feeds on the nightmares of children. The scariest part, it doesn't just collect their nightmares, it grows stronger with their fear. This doll is known as the Labubu Doll, and if you listen closely, you can hear it breathing. Now let me ask you a question. What do you think is inside this box? What do you think the doll is holding? Well, let me show you. It's not just a doll, it's a monster. It's a monster that preys on the fears of children. Every laugh, every nightmare, every scream is energy. Energy that the doll collects. Some believe there's a phrase stitched inside its cloth body, a ritual binding it to a forgotten demon, but no one has ever dared to cut it open. Those who tried either vanished or lost their minds. The doll was first seen in the 1970s in an antique shop in New York City. It was displayed in a glass case with a sign that read, "Do not touch." But people were intrigued. They wanted to know what was inside the box. So they started moving the box from place to place until finally it ended up in a museum. One day, a security guard was patrolling the museum when he heard a child's laughter echoing through the empty halls. He followed the sound and found a group of children gathered around the doll. They were laughing and playing, and the doll seemed to be enjoying it. The security guard felt a sense of unease. He knew he should stop the children, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. He wanted to protect them from the doll's evil, but he also wanted to know what would happen if they stayed just a little longer. As the night went on, the children's laughter turned into screams. The security guard watched in horror as the doll began to move. Its eyes glowed red, and its teeth looked like they could rip apart a human being. Suddenly, one of the children disappeared. The security guard rushed over to the glass case, but it was too late. The doll had already swallowed him whole. From that day on, the doll became known as the Eater of Souls. It was said that anyone who looked into its eyes would be taken away and never seen again. No one knows what happened to the children who played with the doll, but some believe they're trapped inside its body, screaming for help. Now, I want to ask you again, what do you think is inside this box? What do you think the doll is holding? Well, let me show you. It's not just a doll, it's a monster. It's a monster that preys on the fears of children. Every laugh, every nightmare, every scream is energy. Energy that the doll collects. Some believe there's a phrase stitched inside its cloth body, a ritual binding it to a forgotten demon, but no one has ever dared to cut it open. Those who tried either vanished or lost their minds. We've heard Billie Eilish's song about it, but what actually happened to the Labubu Doll? Well, here's the story. In 2017, a group of paranormal researchers from Chicago decided to test the doll. They set up cameras, EMF detectors, and thermal imaging in a locked room with the doll on a table in the middle. For the first 2 hours, nothing happened. But at 2:59 a.m. the cameras recorded movement. The Labubu Doll tilted its head and whispered something. When slowed down, the audio revealed just 2 words, "I'm hungry." 5 minutes later, the lead researcher, Mike, started to feel unwell. He sat down on the table and then collapsed. The doctors who examined him later claimed it was a sudden cardiac arrest, but the footage showed something pulling at his chest, something invisible. The doll was returned to its box and placed in a closet. Then the scariest part happened. A week later, the doll was found to have claw marks on the box and the closet door. Then one day, the team was reviewing the footage when they saw something terrifying. In the closet, the researchers had set up a camera to monitor the doll. But in the footage, you can see the figure of a little girl standing next to the doll. Was she the one whispering in the recording? Was she the one who attacked Mike? And if so, why? The doll was supposedly possessed by the spirit of a young girl who died in the 19th century. Legend has it that a tailor named Randall made the doll for his daughter, but she drowned before he could finish it. He buried her body and made the doll from her skin. Years later, the doll was discovered and taken to a museum. That's where the paranormal investigators got it, but they didn't know that they were bringing a demon into their home. Some believe that the demon used the doll as a vessel to possess those around it. Some say that the demon only wants to be free from the doll, and some believe that the doll is cursed and will bring bad luck to anyone who dares to take it home. In the 1970s, a company called W Germany produced a doll named Labubu. Now you might think that all dolls are creepy, but these dolls were exceptionally creepy. Why? Well, they had disturbingly wide smiles and hollow black eyes. But despite how creepy they were, children loved them, and because of their popularity, the company decided to produce more. But before they could mass produce the dolls, production was halted, and the reason why has been lost to time. For a while, nothing more was heard from Labubu until one day a woman named Brunhilde contacted a local flea market about selling some old toys. Among those toys was a steel box filled with Labubu dolls. Now, according to reports, this woman insisted that the dolls not be taken out of the box under any circumstances. She even went as far as nailing the box shut. Whoever received the box was apparently so unnerved by the dolls' eyes staring directly at them that they brought the box outside and buried it in the ground. And since then, the dolls have never been seen again. Now, there are a couple of different versions of what happened to the dolls after they were buried. Some say that the dolls were trapped inside the steel box and will never be seen again. Others say that the dolls continue to travel from flea market to flea market, waiting to find a new home. But if you let them into your house, they'll never leave. But why exactly would these dolls never leave your house? Well, if you ask any German doll collector, they'll tell you that dolls aren't just inanimate objects. They're portals to another dimension, you see. In Germany, it's common belief that dolls can trap the souls of demons or spirits, and it's believed that once you bring a haunted doll into your home, it'll do whatever it can to prevent you from leaving. And as if the demon doll theory wasn't scary enough, there's also a more realistic explanation. As I mentioned earlier, these dolls were incredibly popular, and as a result, they were mass-produced, meaning that there were hundreds of them made. However, many of them have gone missing over the years, which means that there is a good chance that one of these dolls could show up in your home without you even realizing it. And if you ever invite a friend over who collects dolls, they'll probably notice. But why exactly would a stranger want to put a cursed doll in your house? Well, if you ask any doll collector, they'll tell you that collectors will often go to great lengths to acquire rare dolls. And some collectors will do anything to get their hands on a Labubu doll, even if it means putting a curse on you. So if you ever find a strange doll with a too wide smile and hollow eyes, remember this story. Because once you invite Labu into your home, you might never be able to send it away. But now it's time to make a decision. Do you want to keep Labu in your home, or will you throw it away? Let me know in the comments section down below. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, and share. It really helps me out.